Cool. Recording's on. What's up, bro? Manuj, it's been
What's up?
not too long actually since I last saw you in Philly.
About a month, maybe?
Yeah, a little over a month since my last US trip. Um, for those listening, those watching, this is it's about 8:30 my time in Edinburgh, and Manuj is right outside Philly, so about 3:30 his time. And yeah, welcome to the first Fireside Chat, aka uh Cobra Cast, aka whatever. We're just gonna kibitz for a bit and see how it goes. Got our drams.
Right. We have become correct.
Come correct. We've graduated a bit since the Black Label days. So
Yeah.
I've got
Slow going.
I got this bottle of Glendronach here. It's a Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez cask finish from the Highlands. So nice and little sweet, good for this winter weather that we're having out here. What are you on
Mhm.
right now?
Well, I've got the proper glass for the wedding.
Indeed.
And I got the Elsa Bay, which you introduced me to at the wedding as well. Picked that up at Duty Free. Been enjoying that ever since.
Happy to evangelize good whiskey.
Cheers, brother Lime.
L'chaim. Mm. So tell me, man, there's been a lot going on in your life recently with your journey and your vision for healthcare for the future. So I'd love to just kind of hear more about that because it's super interesting to me.
Sure. So as a background, I'm a physician. I'm a radiation oncologist. Went through, the usual schooling, med school, took a little bit of time off between med school and well, I should say between college and med school, just trying to figure out life, a residency, and then from there, I've had an academic career of almost a decade. Um, but more recently, I've been a bit, the word I'm looking for is it's maybe a bit disencouraged by the way that medicine or kind of big medicine is going, big corporate medicine is going. There's been a loss of autonomy for physicians. There's been a rampant burnout. That burnout has accelerated after COVID. And the message from administration was essentially just kind of deal with it. Um, the words that they gave us were, be resilient, or they gave us resilience training, but said, hey, you should do it on your own time. So really the word, kind of the feeling was, you gotta kind of deal with it. Um, I'm the type of person where if there's a problem, I kind of try to tackle it head on. And I felt not just burned out myself, but also felt for my colleagues and my department. And I have an interest in wellness and well-being on a more global level and a more individual level. So I actually sought out a role in my department as a director of strategic wellness initiatives. That's a mouthful, but basically I was in charge of the well-being of my entire department of 600 people.
Mm,
Initially, I thought was just to support faculty, and the faculty included both physicians, PhDs, postdocs, all that. But my chairman wanted to support the entire department of rad onc. So all of a sudden, I became in charge of the well-being of a small corporation.
mm,
And I had that role for about a year and a half. And we made some sizable differences. We were able to quantify burnout, quantify intention to leave. So essentially quantify retention and quantify potential turnover, put dollar numbers onto that. So it felt like I wasn't making a lot of headway, but big systems being big systems, it kind of just felt like it was lip service. And after a while, I said, I'm not really going to make meaningful change within any reasonable amount of time here. The barriers are just too thick. Um, and I think it's time for me to try something different. At the same time, change has accelerated significantly in the
mm,
last year plus. And I read somewhere that, it's not just that the world is changing, it's that the world is being radically, what's the term I was looking for? Kind of radically revolutionized as we see it with the advent of AI. Um, so I think the combination of medicine heading towards this corporate culture, well-being for physicians and non-physicians, anybody in clinical medicine being kind
mm,
of put at the wayside as paid lip service, and also this kind of shift towards um, a different landscape for healthcare, all kind of came together for me to consider doing something a little bit different. So I've actually now I'm in the midst of launching my own longevity business. I also have a separate healthcare business that I'm working on
Mm.
with a partner. But the longevity business is a main thing that I'm working on right now.
Well, let me ask you real quick, just to kind of as an outsider, somebody who's not really as familiar with that world, just to make sure I understand. So effectively, it's a combination of the bureaucracy you experienced in the corporation, the changing overall um, culture and norms. I guess landscape was already used, which fits of medicine, and the inability to really keep pace with the changes that were rapidly demanding an agile response kind of prompted you, in addition to the burnout, but it kind of prompted you to kind of say, you know what, I need to do something more um not proactive, but more agentic, more empowering.
Yeah, I would say the pace of change may not be one of the drivers. I think healthcare is one of those, especially big academic healthcare and big academic institutions. There's so much inertia and barriers to change that they weren't adopting change fast enough. But I
Mm.
think the other portion that is, kind of more on the pulls a bit more on the heartstrings was, I'm a radiation oncologist, so I treat cancer patients, and they can be pretty tough work. And I think I've, walked the fine line of giving enough of myself without giving too much of myself. And the fact that I can empathize and I can relate and I've developed deep relationships, meaningful relationships with my patients. But once treatment was over and
Mhm.
patients are like, now what? You made it through your journey, or at least you made it to the hardest part of your journey where you've finished your treatment for your cancer. And now you've returned to where you were before. What now? You have possibly some side effects from treatment, hopefully nothing significant, possibly have some side effects from treatment. But what are some of the things that you can do to potentially impact recurrence? But also, what are some of the lessons learned?
Mm.
What, not necessarily only on the health front, but now that you have this kind of reawakening after a diagnosis and treatment for cancer, what change in that, kind of what track can that put you on for change? We have this opportunity that a patient is asking,
Mhm.
Doc, what can I do now? And there's nothing in the healthcare system that really
Mm.
supports that.
Why do you think that is? I mean, that's really surprising to me. I mean, I know in different countries there's different approaches to preventative and reactive medicine, but I'm surprised to hear there's not much, and I don't want to generalize also for all of medicine, but at least for radiation oncology, there's not much for, okay, here's, I don't know if rehab is the right word for it works. It doesn't seem to apply to this situation, but like how do you maintain health and wellness and well, I guess that's the question, right? But why isn't there any kind of post-mortem of sorts? That's also the wrong word. I just don't know the medical terminology for it.
I get
But
it. So it's
yeah.
essentially it comes down to what's called survivorship.
Mm,
And some people don't like that term. They want to be defined as a cancer survivor. But regardless, the most appropriate term is survivorship. And that's because there's no dollars towards it. It's not something that's reimbursed by health insurance companies. So some institutions will have a program, and honestly, most programs are a bit makeshift, in that they may say they offer things, maybe the offerings are not robust, or perhaps it's there, but it's not really well advertised.
got it. So is what is your new initiative? Is it effectively taking that into your own hands and offering that a curriculum of sorts or ad hoc um, medical advice on how to pursue that?
Yeah, so it's definitely not going to be ad hoc. It's going to be a bit of a curriculum. However, it is an individually tailored practice. So it's going to be a bespoke model where no two patients get the exact same care, but it is the answer to that question of a patient asking, Doc, what do I do now? It's empowering people to take charge of their health at a time where they're willing to make change. There was
Mhm.
a book by this woman named Katie Milkman. It's a really practical book. She was a Wharton professor. She I think she was one of the 30 under 30. Um, and she wrote a book called How to Change. really practical, easy read. She talked about something called a new start phenomenon, where if you want to have new change in your life, look for something called a new start. Think about New Year's resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fresh, really well-defined new beginning. Just, a life-altering event like cancer is also a fresh new start. So, kind of capitalizing on that, I think initially a lot of my patients will be from that in that space. But you curiously you use the word rehab. I also like the word prehab, which is
Mm.
not only just defining a patient based on, them coming to me after cancer, but globally, a person who is relatively healthy, who wants to invest in their health, putting in the work now to prevent a problem in the future.
Sure, sure. And I see a lot of capacity here. And again, this is someone who's I'm speaking out of ignorance of the field, but it sounds like there's a lot of room also to pioneer in the sense like you're doing all these bespoke um, treatments, recommendations, these plans, etc. And over time, I imagine you'll get a pretty solid sense of some patterns and eventually become a kind of authority on it and make some more profession level recommendations for providing this level of care to patients.
Yeah, I think, the patterns are pretty well established.
Mhm.
What is it what happens to people as they age? We kind of know what diseases start, when they start on average. The main, top 4 to 5 causes of death, we know what those are. Many of those are largely preventable. And it's within our grasp to, I can't say prevent it forever, because no one's going to live forever. Longevity is not living forever. It's not living to 120, it's not living to 150, but maybe it means, hey, it's within your grasp to live another 10 to 20 years, depending on when you start. And if you're going to live that long, can we push disease off much later? So, for
Mhm.
example, when you look at centenarians, these are people who live 100 years. We look at blue zones, these areas of the world where you have a higher level of people who live much longer life. They don't not die of heart disease or cancer. They just push it off for a lot longer than we do in America or
Mhm.
you do in the UK.
Mhm.
Um, so it's within our, some of that is genetics. Of course, we can't dispute that, but a lot of it isn't. So even though you may not have won the genetic lottery, there are still things within your grasp to delay disease for as long as possible. And in doing so, maintaining your quality of life with yourself and with your family.
So at a high level, what does this look like, both in terms of the kind of care you provide, but also your vision for launching this initiative?
Yeah. So I'd say on a larger level, we first have to have a deep sense of meaning and purpose.
Mhm.
If someone is going to want to live a long time, we need to understand why you want to live longer. There's no point in living longer if you're miserable, right? You need to have kind of a positive psychology mindset and foundation. Beyond that, then it comes down to, doing some individual testing to see where you're at. The testing can include some labs, standard labs, some deep labs, and some pretty advanced imaging as well. Imaging that, wasn't available until just recently.
Mm. So as you launch this company, how do you go about building it and growing it? And I'm thinking, you know, as a physician, as a practicing physician and a leader in because you were directing a center previously, right, at Penn?
Mhm.
And so I don't imagine like in some industries you'll kind of people be kind of contracted in like, oh, by the way, if you want on the side, you can kind of see me on the side, which is not what you were doing because you were full in. But as you go about building your clientele and targeting marketing to people, how are you going to go about engaging that?
Honestly, I really wanted to grow organically.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to come out and just kind of blaze through initially. I want to start off slow. And from those clients, I want them to extract so much value from what I provide that they feel like they need to tell everyone about it. They should tell me you're not charging enough money, something like that. Like they should have so much value that they are my spokesperson. So my growth plan would be to just start off slow and
Mhm.
then organically have that patient tell a friend, tell their spouse, and then just let it grow from there.
Yeah. I mean, having worked in marketing, I can tell you that's the most effective way to spread information. Most trustworthy source, at least, is word of mouth, especially in those networks. And at that age that you're targeting, those social those social networks, not in a internet sense, but de facto connections and relationships are so pivotal. Not just, I mean, they have such a strong effect on your actual physical health, not just your social health.
Completely. And I would say, for those who have worked with a therapist or with a coach before,
Mm.
when you first meet with someone, it may not be a great fit. You may have to talk to many different people before you find that person that you click with. The other thought of letting this thing grow organically is that my initial, cohort of patients that we really like working together, I would assume that most of their friends would probably be of similar personalities. So we
Mhm.
want to make sure that that relationship, matches on both ends.
Yeah, that makes sense. And since then, kind of taking a step back, since you left your role at Penn, it's such an interesting and precarious and terrifying time, but also stimulating in a lot of ways. That in between, both where you're growing, even idea, you're incubating what will become your business, but also taking a step back from your professional trajectory, which you've been on nonstop since as long as I've known you. So at least 15 years. Um, what's that transition been like for you?
I mean, you use the word, I think you use the word terrifying. And honestly, making the decision was quite terrifying.
Mm.
It definitely required more than some nudges from the missus. When you're in medicine, or when you're in like a very well-defined career trajectory, everything's kind of laid out for you. I think medicine is the best analogy because the steps are so clearly delineated. When you start
Mhm.
off pre-med, you take your MCAT, you get into school, med school, you take your shelf exams, you take your USMLEs 1, 2, 3. You get into a residency. For me, it was an internship, then a residency, complete each individual year. Within each year, you got exams. You finish that, then you have to apply for, you take, in my case, there was a written exam and an oral exam to become board certified. Finally, after all that, you're board certified. And for people who are highly motivated, I shouldn't say highly motivated, but for people who are academically inclined,
Mhm.
as big medicine gets bigger, getting into an academic job is not, it's easy. And also at the same time, one thing I recognize is for people who are, first generation Americans whose parents came here to build that American dream for their children, you also have this expectation, but you also, if you came from, for those of us who did not grow up with wealth, who came up, I wouldn't say necessarily poor, although of course some of us who are listening, may have grown up with more dire constraints, but we grew up not well off. We grew up lower middle class, and you have to kind of, you feel like you have to prove yourself. So you're an immigrant or your parents are immigrants, and you feel like you have to prove yourself. So I felt that I was going on this trajectory. I was making all these academic accolades, publishing, speaking at meetings, kind of making a name for myself in the field. And I kind of had this realization that, what is it that I'm really doing this for?
Mhm.
What is it that I'm really trying to achieve? And saying yes to all these academic pursuits, what am I saying no to? Because every
Mhm.
time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And every time you say no to something, you're probably going to have something better to come down the road. And I realized that no, what I was saying no to was more engagement with my family, more mindfulness, more deep relationships. And I felt like ultimately I was living out, the realization I had is that I was living out the expectations of of myself as a child and my parents' expectations that they had for me. I would say past tense because now that you're older and you've got a family, they don't care. They just want you to be around and be a good human being. So
Mhm.
as we come to that realization, it became a bit easier for me to say, you know what, I'm gonna pivot. I'm gonna do things that are a little different. I'm gonna do it on my terms. But the terrifying part is not only just coming off those well-defined train tracks that you've been on this whole time, but that guaranteed income and that stability can be terrifying. And we're not taught any business skills. I picked up a book from the library on how to start an LLC. I had no clue. Um,
You
so
can Google it too, you know.
yeah, I mean, but me, I got to deep dive and to get all the
I know,
details.
I know. And I suppose also to your point, especially about coming up in the world, more or less of means depending on where people are. But you already have the achievement. You're already my son, the doctor, married with a kid. It's like there's nothing else to achieve, which affords you, I imagine, a certain degree of leeway in what you do next. It doesn't have to be a forever thing. And so you've checked all the boxes. I shouldn't say at least for them, and you can go into it without any kind of fear of disappointment, which I imagine um, is liberating.
Definitely.
So I'm trying to think. I want to go. So you've had so much of your time structured for so long, from studying for MCATs to boards to working as a physician, and suddenly you go to the exact opposite, unstructured time, and you have to kind of give yourself a certain degree of structure to get where you want to be. But also there's leeway there because you are now on your own time. Tell me more about how you've been spending your time and how you've been navigating that transition.
And man, I've been really enjoying my time not being in the hospital. Um, Honestly, like I've always been into fitness, and I've gone even further into fitness. So I've been working out a lot more, making a lot of gains. Not that I'm a meathead or anything, but I really enjoy that. Um, Aside from that, I really, like you said, and again, you know me really well. I'm a very structured person. So I've read Tom Newport's book about productivity, and I essentially just, have my day planned out. And the more, kind of the weekend before, I'll kind of write out a rough schedule of how I want my days to go. And then the morning of, I'm always the first one up, and I dedicate some time to myself in the morning for mindfulness practice, kind of just get my mind correct before we do anything. Again, I'll kind of roughly structure out my day and how I'm going to do things, certain tasks that need to be taken care of. But I've also learned that as you're starting a business or you're doing anything new, engaging in a new project, your to-do list is going to be long, especially if you start really process mapping and thinking about all the different steps you have to do, which can get a bit overwhelming. So I've tried to concentrate on two or three big things that I have to get done during the daytime. And if I achieve those two to three things, great. Um, but those little tedious tasks in between things I'm doing, if I can knock that out, great. But if I don't achieve it, it's probably just fine.
Your mindfulness practice, I mean, that sets the whole tone for your day. Tell me more about that. Like, walk me through what you do, whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Sure. So I mean, it's really just kind of some guided meditation in the morning. Um, so when I first wake up, a cup of coffee, wake up, and then I'll go directly into journaling actually, right from the cup of coffee because I feel like that's easier than sitting down and trying to concentrate. So I'll go straight to the journal, and the journal will just start off the morning with gratitude.
Mhm.
So three easy things that I'm grateful for the day before. And the rules just basically have to be, it can't be the same as before. So it can't just be like something monotonous and mindless. So that just kind of set the tone. Hey, this is it's going to be a good day. This is what I'm grateful for. And then I just have a little thing I'll jot down to summarize my day before. Like, hey, this is what went well. This is what didn't go well. These are lessons learned. And then that kind of brings me a bit forward. And I'll kind of also think about what is my, how do I want to perform today? Who do I want to be today? That question of like aspiring to be someone that also kind of motivates me to say, all right, my energy today is going to be this. Um, again, being real, we have some married men listening to it. My wife would be like, your energy needs to be, don't be an a-hole or just like be empathetic. Um, but anyway, so I'll set that out. And then once I'm awake, just kind of meditate for 10 minutes, just kind of clear the mind out and then get going.
Yeah, I was just thinking a couple of years ago I encountered something called a hero's journal, which I don't feel like you need given your own discipline and structure, but I just think it's interesting and might be a helpful tool for others. It basically you kind of outline a single project in the beginning, and each day you start with you do your gratitudes, you do your main tasks for the day, your three things. You identify your allies who are going to help you get there, and also your threats to accomplishing your goals. And you can also kind of parse out your time. And there's a at the end of every week in the journal, there's also a little reflection period on like what went well, what could I change, etc. And every so often in different intervals, I think every month there's like a deeper kind of reflection thing. So it plays into the gimmick of a project as a quest.
Mhm.
And yeah, of course, it's peppered with fun little quotes from like Lord of the Rings and C.S. Lewis.
Oh,
And
that's why you like it. Lord of the Rings.
well, it was an easy overture. Um, I've never been very I've never been very I shouldn't say that. It's been years since I was disciplined about journaling, and I used to do it every single day at night to kind of just take an inventory of the day, which is something that Marcus Aurelius and the other Stoics very much advocate for, to kind of always be on a path to self improvement and taking stock of being in the process of becoming and always being better. And I fell out of that through just time and the tedium of getting to a different stage of adulthood with different demands.
Mhm.
And you can't always no, that's an excuse towards the competent. I'm not going to say you can't always force it. I could force
Well,
it.
21 days. That's all I need to build a new habit.
Well, according to some, but you're right. You're right.
Yeah, honestly, if you find value in it, then you'll find time for it.
Yeah. Those of us with ADHD have trouble forming habits. It just takes one thing, one lapse, and then we're off the train.
That's true.
So I want to be mindful of your time. I know you have another commitment in about 7 minutes. So I want to also ask, you know, over this period from college to med school to fellowship at Penn, and now your current path of um, of vitality and survivorship. In other words, you use survivorship,
Now, we'll probably just call like integrated wellness and longevity.
integrative wellness. See, thank you. I don't even have the vocabulary for this.
All good.
Um, I'm just thinking back to Sigro and like where it all began, so to speak. At least your journey to adulthood, and it's changed throughout the years. I mean, not just the institution of the fraternity and its culture, but the role it has in our lives, right? When we join in college, we want one thing. We have certain values, and those some will stay the same, but some will evolve with us. Hopefully, they evolve with us over time, and we're not trying to go to liquid nightclub or ice house anymore and grab some oh god some trash jungle juice or pick up
So,
some busted chick or whatever. There's different
I've
things
never
that just
done
like
full
I'm not
disclosure, no
judging,
busted
man.
chicks.
I'm not judging, whatever, man. You do you. But it's been 22 years since you crossed, so just over half your lifetime. What role does Sigro still play in your life these days?
Yeah, great question. You're right. It's changed. Your relationship with Sigro will change over time as you mature. I would say, sorry, my dog's walking around, so it sounds like jingle bells. Um, what's really nice about Sigro is that the relationships you form they never die. So even though you may have fallen out of touch with someone, I feel like that person still kind of has your back. So I'll give the good example of me and you. We've known each other now, like you said, 20 or so years. We've gone through times where we were tight. We've gone through periods of time where we didn't talk at all. But there's times that I needed to talk to someone, and I pick up the phone and I called you, and you'll just talk to me, no matter what it is. You just recognize my brother needs me, and I'm there for him. I feel like Sigro still has that support, provides that support. At the same time, it also brings people together.
Mm.
Another brother moved to my area that actually was my LB from a different place. So we crossed in fall 2K1. He crossed over at Rochester, so FF, Brother Inferno, reached out to me after we didn't talk for I don't know how long. And now we see each other once a month or so. Our wives know each other, our kids know each other. Sigro continues to be a way of bringing people together. On top of that, Sigro has the potential to create change in your life. So it was June, I think it was June of this year. And I was still kind of on the fence. I was, like you said, I was incubating this idea of longevity. I wasn't thrilled about staying at my job. And I met a brother at a wedding that I had never met before. We just we completely vibed. And he was doing something similar. And that served as like I would say he was a catalyst.
Mm.
Uh, Hirsch, Kabishar from MSU, now in LA. He was a catalyst for a change, to be honest. I think that conversation was meaningful. And then our conversation, therefore, are meaningful. We're actually going to be with each other in a couple of days in Vegas at a conference too on longevity. So I would
Conference.
say this conference, yeah. So I would say in summary, Sigro continues to be provides support for me when I need it. It provides the brotherhood that's sustained, and I think it still influences me both professionally and personally.
Yeah, I love to hear that. I love to hear that. I mean, being in the UK now, there's um there's another brother who lives in actually two brothers who live in England in the Greater London area. No one else who lives where I live in Scotland. But and I've met up with one of them a few times, but it's still a 5 hour train from where I am to London. But yeah, I love hearing those stories and just those organic connections, kind of strength of weak ties, as we call it in sociology. Weak, not in the sense of they're not weak in the sense that you don't know them already. They're a new connection, a new um, network, if you will, to stimulate your thoughts and ideas, but also in our context with a shared foundation. And I'm wondering, as just kind of listen to you talk, what the fraternity could do, or what alumni could do to create more of those points of connection for opportunities, not even necessarily professionally, but just for connection in general. I mean, we live in relative, I don't want to say isolating times, but especially post-isolated times in with COVID. And I think, social science research has shown that people haven't fully recovered from COVID in a lot of ways, but socially, especially, networks have collapsed a lot or shrunk in a more accurate sense. And people have turned more insular and inward. And what we can do to kind of reignite some of those maybe lost connections, but also new ones in a meaningful capacity.
Yeah, it's a great way to frame it. You're right. I don't think people have fully recovered from COVID. I think during COVID, some of us felt that yearning to connect. Some people just went straight up into hibernation. But I think there are opportunities for us to grow together, to connect. I would love, pre-COVID, we had, I'm from Beta chapter. We would come together usually every December for, a chapter dinner. It would be amazing. See some old folks. A lot of the new kids would be there, and just be great to connect. And it was once a year. I wish it was more often, but it was once a year. And it hasn't happened since 2019.
Mm.
It's not going to happen this year. I guess just because it did happen for the last three. But I think there's opportunities, it doesn't have to be formal. It could be, each city or whatever geography say, hey, every quarter we're going to do this event. And it could be as simple as a happy hour, or for those who can't get out, for those who don't drink, it could be something else. It could be, something lame like a team building event. But how fun would that be to get down with your brothers and do something like an escape room or
Yeah.
whatever.
I
Just
mean,
bring it back. Yeah, I'm sorry, one more point. One more thing I thought about the fraternity is that what I've also noticed is that it keeps us young.
mm,
When I saw you last month, we went for that hike. We hiked for like 2 hours, and we had some more profound conversations. But we also talked like we were 18 years old. When was the last time you did that?
I think my wedding, a few months prior. No, but you're
Yeah,
absolutely right. I mean, especially when there's in-person opportunities, that's creating the focal points to do that. But I think also one of the challenges, we're so spread out and not everyone has kind of stayed in the same place. And for those, especially in like your profession, are very prone to relocation for one position or another as you kind of keep moving up, fellowship, different opportunities. And so, it's not uncommon to reach, at least it wasn't back in the day. I have no idea what it's like now to kind of reach out, get connected with the local chapters, and alumni networks. But, we're far removed from that. We've graduated 10, 15, 20 years ago. So it's like the listserv isn't what it used to be now. So I think part of the challenge for, whether it's an alum or the alumni association or e-board, whoever, is to kind of create a more, I shouldn't say create, yeah, create and facilitate and foster a, what we used to call, like when I was president, a global leadership network, right? And create a, again some sort of focal point to bridge those gaps. Like, yeah, there's a Facebook group. Yeah, there's LinkedIn. Yeah, there's like cow dung on Discord now instead of um, email. But each has its own kind of niche, right? And I think it still remains to be seen and determined what the most appropriate avenue will be, um, to kind of galvanize alumni reconnecting, and reaching out. First of all, becoming aware of it. That's a whole other thing. And then second, actually using the network.
yeah.
So it's like when I saw you, go ahead.
I would say like we don't have to live in isolation in the sense that we're part of a large interfraternity council and we can learn from them. Think of 100-year-old fraternities who lived through war, who lived through depressions and they still persevere. What is that we can learn from them? All it takes is a conversation. Find out what, of course, I understand that there's funding there. That's different. At the same time, what are some of the lessons we can learn from them, or what are some of the, things that we can implement at low cost, that keep us connected? Could it be as simple as a census every couple of years, like, yo, where you're at? Let's get some details. What's your profession? What city are you in? Very simple 2-minute update, and then you have this list, and then you can organize events.
Yeah, we'll leave it to the powers that be to make those moves, because that's we are both happily retired in our phases of life,
Yeah, happy to help, but not to lead.
no doubt. All right, I know we're out of time, so I'm gonna curtail the our lovely and overdue chat. I always really enjoy chatting with you. Um, and so
Likewise.
yeah,
Are we
this
going
will
to
be
share
last time. Yeah.
are we going to share if anybody wants to reach out to me, any undergrads, alum who are in medicine who want to talk about careers outside of, medicine, clinical, non-clinical. There's a couple other things I'm working on too. Hopefully when we share this information, you can, have my email or number as well.
Yeah. How do they reach out? What's your info?
I still got to develop my social media presence and all that. I'm kind of OG, man. I don't do that shit.
Yes, that's
Um,
honest.
Yeah, so email is probably the easiest. It's just my first initial last name, md@gmail.com. So magarwalmd@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, who's ever listening still, thanks for tuning in. I hope it was interesting and educational, and we will catch you next time. Much love, brother.
Cheers.